What do you mean this brake job doesn't need doing? The customer already signed off. Just get it done. The words hit Leonard Cutter like a cold slap across the face. He froze, his hand still clutching an oil-slicked wrench, its metallic grip now slick with more than grease. It was guilt. The voice echoed from the next service bay, muffled through the concrete wall, but sharp enough to slice through his thoughts. There was no hint of jest in the tone. Just quiet, practiced authority. Leonard shifted, pretending to organize a nearby tool cart, his ears straining for more. He already knew what he'd heard, and he hated that he wasn't surprised. Just 2 weeks ago, Leonard had been in a boardroom, high above the noise of the city, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing a skyline he'd helped build, one garage at a time. He stared at the spreadsheet on his tablet, his finger hovering above a line of numbers that didn't add up. Store number 7, his pride, his blueprint for everything that followed, had tripled its repair charges per customer in half a year. Return visits, however, had plummeted. It was a red flag he couldn't ignore. He'd dialed the district manager immediately. The man blamed it on the area. Tough neighborhood, older cars. But Leonard knew better. He didn't build his brand on excuses. He built it on honesty, on late nights under hooded engines, on charging people for what they needed, not what made the till sing. 17 years ago, he'd started with one lift and a borrowed socket set in his father's crumbling garage. Today, it was a franchise. But the higher the numbers climbed, the further he felt from the ground, from the work, from himself. So he took a step no one saw coming. He trimmed his beard, dyed the salt out of his hair, and slipped behind a pair of thick-rimmed glasses. Registered under a false name, Rick. He applied to store number 7 as a trainee mechanic. No one batted an eye. They'd hired 3 new techs that month alone. No one had ever seen the real owner anyway. That was by design. Now, 2 weeks into his undercover return, Leonard, Rick, was elbow-deep in the rusted guts of an old F-150, pretending to be a new hire while quietly unraveling a rot that made his chest ache. Not from effort, but from something heavier. Betrayal. He walked into the break room during lunch, keeping his posture loose like he belonged. The voice from earlier stood in front of the vending machine. Derek. His name tag hung crooked on a grimy shirt, his focus split between his phone and a microwaved burrito. "You always get jobs like that?" Rick asked casually, cracking open a soda with a practiced shrug. Derek looked up. "Like what?" "Customer signs off. Car's fine. Still gets the works." Derek smirked, the kind of smirk that's been earned over years of shortcuts and quiet backroom nods. "You're new, huh? You'll learn. If they can't tell the difference, they don't need to know." Leonard's face stayed still, trained from years of boardrooms and bargaining tables, but his hand clenched the can just a bit too tightly, the metal creasing under pressure. "Who told you that?" Derek shrugged, eyes back on his phone. "Manager doesn't say it straight out. But you get the picture. High tickets, more hours. Keep things lean. You'll be rotating tires all week. Ain't personal. Just the game." Leonard nodded slowly, swallowing the bitterness rising in his throat. "That's messed up, man." Derek leaned in, lowering his voice as if imparting a sacred rule. "Look, just keep your head down. Get your hours. Nobody's forcing anything. We just work the system." That night, in a bare-bulbed studio apartment across town, Leonard lay on a creaky mattress staring at the ceiling fan. It turned with the same slow, tired rhythm as his thoughts. He couldn't stop thinking about the young mum who'd come in yesterday, nervous, clutching her keys like a lifeline. Her van had a minor squeak. she left $800 poorer. And for what? He remembered his father's voice on the day Leonard opened his third shop. "You're doing it right, son. Stay honest, and you'll never have to hide your name." Now, not only was he hiding it, he felt it slipping through his fingers. The next morning, he arrived before the lights were even on. Kendra Rose was already there, sleeves rolled up, ponytail tucked under a cap, fingers stained with grease like it was part of her DNA. She was quiet, precise. Leonard had watched her fix a corroded alternator one-handed while finishing a sandwich with the other. No wasted motion. No small talk. "Hey, Kendra," he said, voice soft. "Mind if I ask you something?" She glanced up, wary. "Depends. What's the deal with the upsells here? Is that just Derek being Derek?" Her eyes flicked around the shop. She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "Don't repeat this." "I won't. It's not just Derek," she said, jaw tight. "Brent, the manager, he leans on us, especially the younger guys. Tells us to pad the quotes if the customer looks unsure. I told him I wouldn't do that. Since then, he keeps me on oil changes, won't trust me with anything else." Leonard swallowed hard. Something hot sat heavy in his chest. Anger, sadness, shame, all of it boiling under the surface. "That's messed up," he whispered. She looked at him long and hard. "Yeah. But nobody wants to be the one who gets sent home early. Not when rent's due." In that moment, Leonard realized something simple but life-altering. The system wasn't broken. It had been rebuilt in his absence into something entirely different. And it bore his name, and that was no longer acceptable. "Yeah, but I need this job." Those 6 words from Kendra shifted something fundamental inside Leonard. Until now, he'd been angry, righteously angry, at the system, at the greed, at the betrayal of everything he'd built. But now it was personal. Now he saw the cost, not in dollars, but in dignity. People like Kendra weren't just struggling to get by, they were being punished for having a conscience. As Leonard stepped back into the service bay, the contrast struck him like a hammer. Brent, loud and loose with a coffee cup in hand, was laughing alongside Derek, whose smirk seemed permanently etched into his face. Meanwhile, Kendra worked in silence, her focus glued to a spark plug socket in the guts of a 2009 Civic. She didn't laugh. She didn't fake charm. She just did the job the right way. And for that, she was sidelined. Leonard's resolve hardened. The company bore his name. It was time to reclaim it. At his lift, he secured the lug nuts on a silver Corolla, the torque wrench clicking rhythmically like a ticking clock. Across the aisle, Brent leaned over a clipboard, chuckling with a customer in a golf polo. Leonard watched as Brent pointed toward the undercarriage. "Your serpentine belt's cracking. If that thing snaps, you lose steering. It's a safety risk." The customer frowned. "Didn't I just replace that last year?" Brent didn't miss a beat. "Could have been remanufactured. Happens all the time. But hey, if we bundle it with a coolant flush, I can get you out under 500. But I need to know now." Leonard clenched his jaw. He recognized that tone, urgent, convincing, dishonest. The man sighed, resigned, and nodded. Brent smiled like they were old friends, then snapped his fingers at Derek. "Priority, this one." Leonard turned back to his car, his stomach knotting. This wasn't just aggressive sales, it was manipulation rooted in fear and engineered through charm. He looked at the clock, still 2 hours until lunch, but his mind was already moving faster than time. He didn't just need proof, they'd deny hearsay. He needed records, patterns, evidence, something undeniable. Later that morning, a battered white Dodge limped into the bay, Arizona plates barely hanging on. The bumper was zip-tied, The woman who stepped out was sun-weathered, early 50s, sandals nearly worn through. Leonard caught her voice at the front desk, soft, polite, unsure. She clutched a styrofoam cup and waited, eyes flicking between the vending machine and her purse. Her car landed on lift 3. Leonard volunteered immediately. Kendra tossed him the keys. Brakes squeal, that's it. He pulled the wheels. Pads were thin, but nowhere near metal. He'd seen worse make it through a full season. Rotors were glazed but didn't need replacing. It was a textbook example of inform, not alarm. Leonard walked into the service office. Brent was hunched over a monitor. Pads are low, Leonard said, voice calm. But they're good for another couple months. I'd recommend a heads up, maybe a light inspection down the road. Brent didn't even look up. Write it up. Pads, rotors, brake fluid. Toss in sway bar links. Leonard frowned. They're not bad. Brent turned, eyes dull and cold. Did I ask if they were bad? Silence. A second too long. Brent leaned back, sighing like he had to educate a child. Rick, this isn't your uncle's garage. People come in, we keep their cars safe, and we keep the lights on. You got opinions? Save 'em for beer night. Leonard didn't argue. He just nodded, slowly. Got it. But as he walked away, he didn't head back to the car. Instead, he made a quiet beeline toward Kendra. You ever push stuff you know isn't needed? She glanced up, already knowing where this was going. Number all. And that's why I barely get any repair jobs. What happens if you speak up? She looked back at her tools. Last guy who did. Got sent to store 11. Out in the sticks. No customers. He quit after a month. Who made that call? Brent. District backed it. Leonard's nostrils flared. That explained the numbers. High revenue, low returns. The scam was organized, protected, and profitable. After lunch, Leonard was once again assigned to tire rotations, grunt work meant to keep the obedient quiet. Derek passed with a chuckle. Told you not to play Boy Scout. Leonard didn't respond. Instead, he struck up a quiet conversation with Maddie, the front desk assistant. She'd always been kind, always efficient, but guarded. You get a lot of complaints? He asked, gently tapping a lug nut into place. She looked around, then leaned in. Some. Usually people upset about pricing or confused about what we said versus what we did. They ever call back? She nodded. Yeah. A few said they had another shop look and were told the part was fine. What do you say? She hesitated. Brent told us to call it a safety precaution. I stopped reading the invoices. It's easier that way. That hit him. Harder than he expected. She wasn't apathetic. She was worn down. Like so many here, she'd just given up. The system didn't need her to believe. It just needed her to comply. That night, Leonard offered to lock up. Brent didn't care. Alone, Leonard moved fast. 6 invoices. 3 showed fluid flushes that never happened. 1 listed a hazardous materials fee, no such materials. 2 billed parts that had never been touched. He photographed everything, sent it to his private email, then deleted the browser history. The next morning, Brent waltzed in late, sunglasses still on, reeking of entitlement. Rick, oil changes today. Bay's full. Leonard didn't move. Can I talk to you first? Brent barely lifted his eyes. Make it quick. There's a pattern here. You're pushing unnecessary repairs, inflating invoices. That's fraud. Brent laughed, just once. You gonna write a letter to the Better Business Bureau? I'm saying you're putting this shop at risk. This brand. These people. Brent stepped closer, breath hot with disdain. You don't get it. You're new. This is how it works. You think a speech is going to fix it? Leonard didn't flinch. Number just letting you know what's coming. Brent's smirk faltered for the first time, but he turned away. Get back to work. Leonard walked out to the bay, but this time he didn't touch a single wrench. At 10:30 sharp, a black SUV pulled into the lot, crisp white shirt, clipboard, corporate liaison. Leonard had sent the files at midnight. The audit was unannounced. Brent stepped out of his office, confused. What's this? No answer. The liaison entered the office with 2 staff members. Pulled logs, repair records, invoice history. Derek leaned over to Leonard, voice low. What the hell's going on? Leonard didn't answer. He walked to Maddie, still behind the front desk. You might want to step outside for a bit, he said quietly. Things are about to change. She blinked, confused but curious. Then she stood and followed. Inside, the volume rose. You billed for labor not performed. That's a termination offense, the liaison said, voice rising above the shuffle of papers. Leonard stood by the window, watching Brent's empire finally shake. He didn't smile. He just felt the weight lift, slowly, from his chest. Brent tried to talk his way out of it, deflecting, downplaying, blaming miscommunication or rookie tech errors. But the paper trail was meticulous. Leonard had made sure of that. The invoices didn't lie. Derek was called in next. His name was on 4 falsified repair sheets. He shifted blame toward Brent, claiming he was just doing what he was told. But finger-pointing wasn't enough to clear his name. The liaison didn't waver. Derek was asked to remove his badge and vacate the premises. Quietly. Immediately. Leonard stood near the bay doors as both men passed him, Brent with a face flushed red and jaw locked tight, while Derek, usually loud and swaggering, kept his eyes glued to the ground. Neither said a word. Leonard didn't speak either. He didn't need to. Then Kendra was called in. Leonard watched from a distance as she sat across from the corporate liaison, her posture steady but cautious. They asked about her reduced assignments, the pattern in her file, the upsells she'd refused to push. She answered every question with quiet truth, never once letting her voice betray the years of being overlooked, sidelined, underestimated. When she returned to the shop floor, her eyes were wide, her face unreadable. "They're moving me to diagnostics," she said, almost whispering. "Full rate. Starts tomorrow." Leonard allowed himself a small smile. "You earned it." She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Why now? Why all this? He met her gaze, really met it, then reached up and slid off the glasses that had disguised him for the past 2 weeks. Her breath caught. Her expression shifted, slowly, from shock to disbelief. "No way." Leonard Cutter nodded once. "I needed to see it for myself." She stared at him, the weight of the realization crashing over her. Then she looked toward the office, where everything had begun to unravel. So what now? Leonard let his gaze sweep over the garage, the humming lifts, the buzz of phones, the faint sound of a socket wrench clattering in the distance. He felt the years, all of them, press against his chest like a lead blanket. All the promises, all the pride, and all the damage. "Now," he said, "we fix it." An hour after Brent and Derek were escorted out, the shop was quieter than it had been in years. But it wasn't the quiet of fear. It was the kind of silence that follows a storm, the hush before rebuilding begins. There were no jokes shouted across the bays, no passive-aggressive spats about repair times, just the sound of focused work, wary glances, a space holding its breath. Leonard didn't return to Rick. That part was over. He walked the floor as himself, without a word, just watching, listening, observing the people who still showed up despite the pressure, the unfair shifts, the lingering threat of retaliation. The ones who stayed honest in the cracks of a broken system. At noon, he called a meeting. The break room was cluttered with half-eaten sandwiches, styrofoam cups, and unfinished paperwork. No one sat. They stood, leaning on doorways, walls, tool carts, waiting. Leonard positioned himself near the back wall, arms folded, eyes scanning every face. "Some of you know who I am now," he began. "Some of you probably Googled me during your break." A few chuckles flickered. Nervous energy. "That's fine," he continued. "I started this company 17 years ago with one rule. Fix what's broken. Explain what isn't. That's it." He paused. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was reverent. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. Darren, the oldest tech in the shop, leaned against the fridge and spoke. "Brent pushed us, but it wasn't just him. Pressure came from higher up." Leonard nodded. "I know. I've already begun tracking signatures, authorization chains. The district manager's been suspended pending investigation." He let that sink in. "This goes beyond Store 7, but this is where it changes." A younger tech, Lewis, stepped forward, hand still stained with grease. "What about us? We didn't agree with what was happening, but we didn't stop it either." Leonard's voice softened. "You didn't have the power to stop it, but you will." He gestured toward the service office. "Starting tomorrow, every invoice will go through a dual sign-off. One tech, one advisor. If either of you flags something questionable, it doesn't move forward until I review it myself." Matty, usually quiet, raised an eyebrow. "How's that going to work with volume? We're already behind." Leonard nodded. "We'll take the hit. I'd rather lose a few hours than a customer's trust." Kendra spoke next, arms crossed. "We're short-staffed. Everyone's pulling doubles." Leonard turned to her. "Already addressed. 3 certified techs from Store 10 are being transferred here temporarily. Clean records, solid customer scores. They'll be here Monday." A beat passed. Then Darren murmured, "It's a start." Leonard's voice was steady. "It's not just a start. It's a rebuild." He didn't wait for applause or gratitude. He left them there, in that sacred pause between ruin and revival, to process the truth of what was happening. That afternoon, Leonard sat in the office Brent used to occupy. The blinds were half closed. A stack of flagged invoices lay before him. He read each one, every false charge, another crack in the mirror he was trying to reassemble. He accessed the internal complaint system. He'd never bothered with it before. Now, he read every message. Words from people who felt rushed, ignored, manipulated. One was from a retired army mechanic. He'd questioned a transmission repair, said it wasn't needed. The shop told him he didn't understand modern vehicles. Leonard set the file down and rubbed his eyes. A soft knock at the doorframe made him look up. It was Maddie, holding a manila folder. "These are the cash payments for the last quarter," she said. "I figured you'd want to see those too." He took the file without looking up. "Thanks." She hesitated. "You okay?" Leonard looked at her. Really looked. "I didn't know how deep it went," she said quietly. "Not really." He sighed. "You knew enough to stop looking. That tells me you saw more than you wanted to." Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I just didn't think anyone would listen." His voice was low, honest. "You were right. No one was. But now, they were. But that ends now." Maddie didn't smile. She didn't have to. Her nod was enough. Quiet, firm, and full of something that had been missing for a long time. Belief. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Leonard in the silence of a shop slowly coming back to life. That evening, Leonard did something few owners would bother to do in an era of emails and Zoom calls. He scheduled face-to-face meetings with every store manager in the region, 3 at a time, every evening for a full week. No shortcuts, no screens. He wanted to sit across from them, to look each one in the eyes, to see who flinched when the truth landed. The first group arrived just after closing. One walked in with irritation in every step. Vince, head of Store 9. Another, Jordan, a tall, quiet man, crossed his arms as if bracing for confrontation. And then there was Kara, from Store 4, eyes hollow with exhaustion and truth buried behind years of staying quiet. Leonard didn't offer coffee. No small talk. Just a folder on the table. "Here's the situation," he said. "Store 7 fabricated repairs. Inflated invoices, cut corners. I went undercover, found more than I was ready for." Vince leaned in, defensive. "So, what now? We all get audited?" Leonard's eyes didn't flicker. "You get reviewed. Every invoice, every complaint. Starting tonight." Kara's voice was quiet. "If we find problems, do we get a chance to fix them? If you were misled..." "Yes," Leonard said. "If you were complicit..." "No." Jordan, calm but blunt, spoke up. "Your district staff, those are the ones setting targets. They push the quotas, not us." "They're already being rotated out," Leonard replied. "The oversight chain is being rebuilt from the ground up. From now on, any frontline employee can report directly to me. No filters." Vince scoffed. "That's not scalable." Leonard leaned in, voice firm. "Neither is fraud." The room fell into a heavy silence. "I'm not here to preserve the structure," he continued. "I'm here to protect the name. If that means tearing the structure down, then so be it." The meeting ended without applause, without resistance. Just 3 managers walking away with their minds turned upside down. The next morning, something had changed at Store 7. The air felt lighter. Not free, not yet, but clearer. The toxic fog of paranoia was beginning to lift. You could feel it in the way people moved. Cautious, measured, but present. Kendra was at bay too, running diagnostics on a hybrid sedan with calm, clinical focus. Lewis had a Jeep up on a lift, replacing a control arm with practiced precision. Maddie had shifted the front desk layout entirely, separating billing from intake, giving customers clarity and space. Leonard sat in the lobby, not directing, just watching. That's when a man walked in, middle-aged, calloused hands, ball cap stained with sweat. He held a folded repair estimate from earlier that week. "I came in Tuesday. Said I needed a new rack and pinion. Didn't sit right with me. Wanted a second opinion." Leonard stood. "Mind if I take a look?" The man handed over the paper. Leonard scanned it, then nodded toward the bay. "Give me 20 minutes." He rolled the car up himself, inspected the steering assembly inch by inch. What he found wasn't catastrophic, just a minor leak at the boot. A seep, not a rupture. Honest wear. Not worth the replacement cost. He walked back into the lobby. "You've got a slow leak, nothing critical. Keep an eye on the fluid, but no need to replace anything yet." The man blinked. "You serious?" "Dead serious, and I'm sorry you were told otherwise." The man studied him. "You the boss?" Leonard extended his hand. "I am." The handshake lingered, then a simple nod. "Then you're all right." Leonard turned, and behind the desk, Maddie had been listening. She didn't try to hide it. "Thanks," she said softly. "For what?" "For saying the truth out loud." Leonard gave her a tired smile. "Get used to it." She didn't smile back. But she didn't look away, either. That night, Leonard stayed late, alone in the office, But he wasn't reviewing violations. He was watching security footage. Not for what went wrong, but for who stayed late, who volunteered for the toughest jobs, who covered for others, who tried to keep things upright while the system around them bent and buckled. He made a list, not of failures, but of people worth investing in, people who had held the roof up when it nearly collapsed. The next morning, Leonard unlocked the shop himself. The cold spring air nipped at his skin as he stepped into the quiet space. 2 cars had been dropped off overnight, one with a flat, one with a scrawled check engine form. He walked through each bay, no rush, just listening to the silence, letting it speak. The audit team had finished their sweep 2 days earlier. Their findings confirmed what Leonard had already known. But what mattered now was what remained. Who remained? Store 7 was down to 4 full-time techs and Maddie at the desk. The reinforcements from Store 10 wouldn't arrive for 3 more days. They were stretched, but not broken. Lewis arrived first. Yawning, thermos in hand, sleeves rolled. "You're here early," he said. "So are you." "Dropped my cousin off at work." Lewis shrugged. "Figured I'd just come here." Leonard nodded. "You good to handle the tire job?" "Got it." As the others filtered in, Leonard assigned jobs with care. Kendra to diagnostics, Darren to a serpentine belt, Lewis on the flat. Leonard himself took the oil changes. He didn't announce it, didn't explain. He just grabbed the keys and went to work. By mid-morning, the rhythm was back. Customers came in. The front bell rang every 20 minutes. Maddie handled intake with quiet confidence. No fluff, no pressure. Just facts. When she didn't know something, she asked. When she got it wrong, she admitted it. That's what Leonard had been waiting to see. Not perfection. Ownership. Around 11, a black BMW purred into the lot. Polished, low, aggressive. The driver stepped out, late 20s, sharp sunglasses, cell phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, I'm here. I told him it was the rotors this time, said brakes again. Just stupid money stuff." He entered the shop. "Anyone here know what they're doing with German brakes?" Leonard met him at the counter. "What's the issue?" "Got new pads 6 weeks ago. Still squeals. I think the shop didn't resurface the rotors." Leonard nodded. "Give us an hour. We'll take a look." The man raised an eyebrow. "You're not going to try to sell me new everything, are you?" "Nope. Just going to look." He handed over the keys. "All right. Let's see if this place is different." Leonard passed the job to Kendra. "Bay 2. Document everything." 15 minutes later, she returned with a clipboard. "Pads are cheap aftermarket. Rotors weren't touched. They're grooved. If we don't resurface, it'll keep squealing." "Can you resurface safely?" "Plenty of metal left." Leonard turned to the customer. "You've got 2 options. Resurface the rotors and keep the current pads. It'll work, but shorten pad life. Or we replace the pads with quality ones. Either way, no upsell, just facts." The man studied him again. "Testing. You're not pushing?" Leonard shook his head. "Nope." The man exhaled. "Resurface it. I'll live with the pads." Leonard smiled. Not because of the sale, but because trust was being rebuilt. One job, one voice, one truth at a time. Kendra nodded and headed back to the bay. As the customer pulled away, she turned to Leonard with a look that said more than words ever could. "That felt good," she said quietly. He didn't ask for specifics. He didn't need to. He just replied, "Keep going." By early afternoon, the crew was at capacity. Lewis was still battling the tire job. Rusted bolts had slowed him down, and Darren had hit a wall with a seized tensioner pulley that refused to budge. Everyone was stretched, but no one complained. Leonard filled in the cracks where he could, checking repairs, running parts, even grabbing the phone when Maddie was stuck in the endless loop of a warranty call. He didn't announce his help. He just did what needed doing. At 3 p.m., a delivery driver burst through the front door. Short, winded, red-faced, urgency in every step. "I need someone to look at my van. It's losing power on hills. I've got another delivery in 2 hours." Maddie looked to Leonard, who scanned the board. Every hand was full. "I'll take it," he said, standing. "Won't be a full diagnostic, but I'll tell you if it's drivable." 10 minutes under the hood, and he spotted the problem. A cracked vacuum hose. It was causing intermittent misfires. Leonard clipped the damaged section, grabbed a replacement hose from the stockroom, and swapped it in with practiced speed. He handed the driver a simple receipt. $20, he said. "You're good to go." The driver blinked, relief crashing over him. "You just saved me from a screaming boss." He gripped Leonard's hand tightly before heading out. As the door swung shut, Darren walked over, drying his hands on a rag. "You're not invoicing him for labor?" Leonard shook his head. "Not everything's about the margin." Darren grinned, rubbing his beard. "That feels new. It should have never felt old." By closing time, the shop floor was clear, every bay cleaned, no carryovers, no complaints, no unexplained fees. Leonard gathered the crew in the break room. This time, no speech, just boxes of takeout already opened across the table. They sat down slower than usual, their silence not from tension, but the earned fatigue of honest work. Maddie was the first to speak. "A customer told me today it was the first time she didn't feel like she had to Google what I was saying." Kendra chuckled softly. "One of mine asked if we were under new management. I told her, sort of." Lewis leaned back in his chair. "I didn't watch the clock once today." Darren nodded, eyes a little glassy. "Feels like we're actually fixing things again." Leonard scanned the room, their faces, their shoulders slightly slouched, not with burden, but with relief. "That's the goal." They ate in peace. No one rushed out. No one looked at their phones. For the first time in a long while, the shop didn't just feel like a workplace. It felt like a place where people wanted to be. After everyone left, Leonard stayed behind, walking the bays with deliberate care. He checked the small things, tools out of place, parts due to restock, maintenance notes left forgotten. He wasn't nitpicking. He was tending, stewarding, watching over a place he once feared he'd lost. As he powered down the office lights, he noticed a sticky note on the monitor. "Thanks for seeing us." No name. No need. He left it there. The following week, the team from Store 10 arrived. One of them, Rob, a former diesel tech with military discipline, brought a grounding presence that immediately balanced the chaos. With the added help, Kendra and Darren were freed to focus on high-level diagnostics. Maddie took the lead on intake training for the new hires without being asked. Leonard didn't stay full-time, but he returned every third day. Not to inspect, to stay connected, to make sure the new heartbeat stayed strong. The district manager, who had overlooked everything, who had silently sanctioned the fraud, was gone, fired, replaced by someone who had earned the title not through politics, but through grit and grace. Kara from Store 4. Her first act was bold. She formed a rotating technician council, one representative from each location, monthly meetings with leadership, no filters, no buffer, just voices heard and respected. The invoice system was rebuilt from the foundation up. Every store adopted dual signature billing. Every customer received annotated photo logs of completed work. It slowed things down. But trust exploded. Retention hit record highs. Leonard also met with legal. Together, they formalized a whistleblower policy. Anonymity guaranteed. Zero tolerance for retaliation. The first report came in just a week later, from Store 9. A service advisor had been pocketing under-the-table payments. He was dismissed the same day. Word spread. And slowly, the culture shifted. Not through dramatic speeches, not through fear, but through relentless, quiet action, through visible integrity. 1 month later, Leonard returned to Store 7 again. He found Kendra walking a customer through a diagnostic scan. The woman asked thoughtful questions, pointing at the tablet screen. Kendra explained each part in clear, accessible language. No jargon, no upsell. Just truth. When the customer left, Leonard approached. "You ever thought about training the next round of hires?" Kendra raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" "You've got the instincts," Leonard said. "You explain things clearly, and more importantly, you don't back down." She looked down for a second, then back up. "Yeah," she said. "I'd do it. I'll make sure you have the time and the pay to do it right." She nodded. No big moment, no applause, just quiet confidence. As Leonard walked back toward the office, he passed Lewis, calibrating a wheel alignment sensor with laser focus. The young man looked up. "This place feels different now." Leonard didn't break stride. That's the idea. He stepped into the office, closed the door, and sat down. Not everything was fixed. Not yet. But for the first time in a long time, he believed it could be. The name above the door meant something again. And Leonard Cutter would never let it slip away again.